Give us where we are at this moment, 1 week out. We are hearing better music, but to Joe's point, not everyone is joining on the optimism bandwagon, but yeah, it feels like it's neutralizing.
Congressman McHenry has been definitely the glass half empty of the negotiators, so him being not pessimistic, I would say, is a small step forward towards the deal, so that's good news. You know, today there have been a lot of phone calls and Zooms between the White House team and the GOP negotiators in the Capitol. They have not met in person yet today, but they have been communicating, we presume going back and forth with numbers. It does appear that some things are squared away. There will be some kind of energy permitting legislation in there with also some sweeteners for progressives to do with electric transmission lines. Defense spending, it appears, won't be as high as Republicans had hoped, more in line with what Biden had proposed earlier this year. But there's still a lot of pieces that need to take shape, including domestic spending, the length and size of the debt ceiling increase, and whether or not work requirements are going to be in there.
You put it best, Annmarie. It's one thing to cut a deal. It's another thing to get it passed through Congress. There are a lot of concerns that the president may be losing progressives in this, that Speaker McCarthy may be losing members of the Freedom Caucus. The House Minority Leader, Hakeem Jeffries, got to this earlier in a news conference today. Listen to his take.
What is clear to me increasingly is that many extreme MAGA Republicans have made the political calculation that a dangerous default and crashing the economy and triggering a recession is in their political interests.
One concern for Democrats here, the president, Mario, is that, yeah, we cut a deal with Speaker McCarthy, but we don't know if he actually has the votes in his own Republican caucus. Is that slowing things down?
No, absolutely. I mean, that's part of what's being discussed right now. Again, all of this is occurring through the backdrop of what we saw in January with that 15 vote for him to get the gavel. That's informed a lot of the White House's thinking. Some of it has been a miscalculation on the part of the White House, to be sure, but that is something that is an elephant in the room, whether or not he can hold his caucus together, and to what degree President Biden can even hold some of the Democrats together as well.
Well, it's a similar story on both sides, isn't it?
Yes. Exactly. We heard from Speaker McCarthy, and this is exactly what he had to say. He's trying to sit down with the president, but there are progressives in the room who are pushing him. I believe we have that sound. Let's take a listen to what he had to say earlier today.
The difficult part is the Democrats today are not the same Democrats. They're very extreme. They're much more on the socialist wing. We see them up their anger right now against the president when he's trying to curb spending at the same time negotiating with me. That's not productive, but it's really challenging.
So even if Biden wins in terms of not defaulting, because he gets a deal, how much does he lose because he angers so many in his party?
Well, 2024 is upon us, right? We saw the unrelated Twitter gaffe last night,
we'll
but
it's
upon us. And so you're going to need progressives. And for someone of President Biden's age, et cetera, he's going to also need to lean on surrogates. So he's going to have to lean on those AOCs, the Jayapals, all those folks to really carry his message. And while they may still do it because he's a Democratic president, you want them to have full buy-in and be able to look their constituents in the face and say, this is what we delivered for you.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the numbers here for a moment, because nothing's been hammered out, and we understand that they are getting closer on top-line figures. We're not going to be writing any budgets here, but we're looking for some big numbers. And we did hear about that from Karine Jean-Pierre, the press secretary at the White House. If we can get to her comment on that, let's listen.
We are negotiating with Republicans in good faith. And we, as I mentioned yesterday, and as the president mentioned on Sunday, we offered an additional cut to the spending of $1 trillion on top of the $3 trillion that we mentioned in our budget.
So this is the big item to negotiate here, right? To actually get to a number that sounds like it's not going to be the $130 billion the speaker's looking for. Is that safe to say?
I think so. What they're trying to do, though, is figure out how to count these numbers, right? So there's a pretty widespread agreement to claw back some COVID spending that was not ever used by the states. So that's $65 billion right there. So that gets you pretty much halfway to that $130 billion. But do you count that in the savings? Are you looking for $130 billion on top of that? Do you look just in the discretionary budget, or do you look into mandatory programs, the the social programs and whatnot that the government has to pay into. So they're essentially trying to figure out not just what to cut, but how to count what they cut.
$65 billion of those unspent COVID funds. That's more than the Treasury has today. Today, the Treasury's cash balance fell to $49.5 billion, one of the smallest we've seen since 2021. So although there was Republicans talking about Janet Yellen maybe putting her thumb on the scale, potentially the Treasury Secretary is correct. But Megyn, is it not odd that they're able to kind of hammer out some of the agreement in terms of the items that are on the margins, whether it's work requirements, defense spending, but they still have not been able to fully come to a top-line figure? Isn't that where they should be starting? Isn't that the meat and bones of the deal?
You would think so, but there's so many interests at stake here, and there's so many inputs. You know, we talked about the progressives. McCarthy's dealing with his conservative flank. That while the negotiations have whittled down to a handful of hand-picked negotiators, that doesn't mean that members aren't calling aren't calling the speaker, aren't calling the president. Congressman McHenry said he's getting messages from Wall Street left and right, and his text messages are a dumpster fire. So there's a lot of cooks in this kitchen.
No wonder why his glass is half empty.
You have to feel for the man. We talked today with Mark Zandi on Bloomberg Sound on Bloomberg Radio today. This is the chief economist at Moody's Analytics. While everybody's talking about optimism, I would say, Mark, you must be feeling good about this. Are we about to get a deal? Listen to his take.
I'll have to tell you, I'm getting more nervous. Just talking to folks in D.C., both on the Hill and the administration, it just feels like this thing can really go off the rails. The politics are just so vexed.
Mario, he put the odds of a default at 1 in 4. He said he's more nervous today than he was just a couple of days ago. Who are we supposed to believe here?
Well, his job is to be super careful, to be sure. He's supposed to screen the credit of everyone. And he's seen what we've been through in 2011. We saw the alert that Fitch put out last night as well. So it's just doing the due diligence. And again, while everything is, by all accounts, there is optimism. This is a different Washington than what we saw in 2011. That 2011 creature that we saw has essentially manifested and grown itself over the last decade plus here now to what we have here past the Tea Party into this MAGA movement as well, where there is a wing of the party that wouldn't mind or isn't afraid, I should say, of defaulting.
Some don't even believe that we would default, or if we defaulted, it would be that bad.
We've been hearing from a lot of them, you're right.
Right. So if we were to get to an agreement, though, which if we believe everyone at their word, they are getting closer, Megyn, tell us how difficult this is going to be to pass, and how long would it actually take to pass the House and the Senate?
So, to get McCarthy, as part of his deal to become Speaker, promised that he would give lawmakers 72 hours to read legislation. Nobody actually ever reads legislation, but this is sort of a good faith offer and it's something that McCarthy has said time and again he would stick to. So that's 3 days right there. So if they got a deal tomorrow, they still have to write the legislation, and then you're talking maybe like a Tuesday vote in the House. The Senate, we've already seen at least one senator, Senator Mike Lee from Utah, come out and say, absolutely not, I am going to put the brakes on anything. It only takes one senator to gum up the works over there. So, so that already gets us past June 1st. Probably what we're going to need is some kind of like a 3-day suspension to the debt ceiling that passes the House. And then, Senator McConnell over there is going to have to really try to do some arm twisting to get the Mike Lees of the world not to object to that, so that can pass before June 1st. That's my guess at this point. But
actually 2
Sounds easy to me.
Yeah.
Maybe not.